Everyone dreams about living an uncommon life, but how we define that dream is very different for each of us. And for most, it's a lifelong pursuit. Welcome to the Uncommon Life Project podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living that life or enjoying the journey to get there. We're going to also give you some tools, tricks, and tips for starting or accelerating your own efforts to live an uncommon life, a life worth celebrating and savoring. Please welcome your hosts, Brian Dewhurst and Philip Ramsey.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Uncommon Life Project, where I'm your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I am Brian Dewhurst.
I love my job. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't even call it a job anymore. I call it a career. And so for the people who are listening that are our clients, thanks for letting us do it. We love what we do. We are financial advisors. And I hate that word, by the way. I feel like it's a 4-letter word. When people ask me what I do, I'm like, I own my own business is basically what I say. But we don't have elevator speeches. We're a little bit different financial advisors than your average. And we love to unlock the true gifting that's inside of our clients and get them to do what they love to do every day and to get paid for it. That's what I'd say that's our motto. That's kind of like our core values. And when you start talking to people like that, a lot more people want to talk and hear what you have to say because it's your plan, your customized financial plan. And then we put you in the center of it because you are your asset or your best asset. So Brian and I are owners of this company. We've been helping families over how many years, Brian? 8, 9? 8.
8.
8 years in July. So we love what we do. And if you ever would want to know more about us, we always have a 15-minute free consultation. And this is how we met our guests on the show today. So cannot wait to get into this. This is one of my favorite stories and cannot wait to unpack this. So we have the one and only Brie on the show. So let's do the bio. We'll get her on the show and then we'll go from there. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite bios too, by the way.
Yes.
So we have the one and only Brie King with us today, and her bio is one sentence, and I love it. Brie worked in corporate healthcare for 6 years, had babies, started a side hustle, and is now living in a van down by the river.
Yes.
More seriously, she owns and operates the Riverwalk Airbnb and Elk River Outfitters in Tennessee. And welcome to the show, Brie King.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. I actually forgot that I wrote my bio like that. Now I'm a little embarrassed.
You shouldn't be embarrassed. So
Just own it.
First and foremost, we always try to highlight different aspects of the uncommon path, the uncommon life that we have with people. And so for you, it's very interesting because you called us out of a whim. You heard our podcast with one of our mutual friends. We were on their podcast and you decided to take the leap of faith and give us a call. And I remember that first time we talked. I don't know if you did, Brie, but it was magical. And here's why. Because I wouldn't say that you were in a rut, but you wanted to do something bigger and you just didn't know how to break through that obstacle. And in talking, do you remember what we were like? You were telling me about the property that you owned.
Yes.
And you were like, it is the coolest property. It has woods. It's just huge. And I remember, what was my suggestion? I can't wait to hear what you
Okay, so I was actually mowing my grass listening to the podcast, and Justin Wise, who's my business coach at my marketing company, had you guys on.
Yep.
And I was looking at this property while I'm mowing and listening to y'all, and I was like, man, I can do something better with that 20 acres I never stepped foot on. And so you said to look into having a yurt village. And I thought, you know what? This is the guy right here. He knows what I want.
It was great because I remember really being reluctant to give you that suggestion. And I'm like, all right, Brie, have you ever heard of a yurt? And here's what I said. She had such a big footprint and it was huge, woods. Right. And it's in Tennessee. That's where you live, right?
Yes.
And it was perfect for just little yurt village. And when I was like, do you know what a yurt is? I remember just you lighting up oh, I love yurts. And I'm like, oh, we are kindred spirits. We are doing the deal.
Oh, man.
And so that's kind of what we started with. That was our idea and just kind of went off from that. And so tell us the story. Okay, maybe we're kind of fast forwarding this. Tell us the story of how you started this uncommon path. And obviously you were you were doing something else. So how did you start switching from that career mode to what you're doing now, owning your own business? What is the business you own? Give us a background.
Sure. Yeah, I went to school. I've always been pretty driven. I would say I played college sports and went ahead and got my business degree, or went to business school. Um, and I wanted to be in healthcare. I worked in Nashville and was at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital and just fell in love with healthcare in general. I wasn't clinical, but just to have an impact. I loved it. And so had gotten married and moved to small town Tennessee. And I ended up working for a somewhat local hospital. It was about a 30-minute drive, but climbed the ladder fairly quickly and got to see the good and the bad of healthcare or any major, corporation or industry. Had to make some pretty tough decisions. I was in management. I think I had about 100 people under me, and I was 28 at the time, I think. And so yeah, I think I got burnt out, like probably a lot of people. Had started having a family, so the energies had to be, of course, prioritized. And so I had little babies at home and a family. And I just started thinking, I was like, man, I can't go on like this for another 30 years. It's draining me. Mm-hmm. I'm getting wrinkles. I was like, I got to do something different. And I always had a thing kind of for marketing. And I think if somebody were to say what my gift was, I keep hearing it just as far as making people believe that they can, I think is what my kind of gift is. And so I started researching anyways. I ended up starting a side hustle, a marketing company, where we were doing a lot of marketing for the hospital, and I had other people wanting to say, hey, can you do this for my business? Mm-hmm. At the time I had no interest in it. And then I think God just worked on my heart and realized that, look, if this is what you want, I'm giving you the opportunity. And so decided to go ahead and go full time with my marketing business. It's been about 2 years now. So it's digital marketing. The ironic thing is it's called Elk Media Company, which is named after the Elk River, which I didn't know at the time would play such a huge role in my life today. So that was
don't you jump over it. Yeah. Don't you jump to that. Don't you jump to that yet.
It's like a precursor.
So it is. Just hang on, kids. So like you're divorced, right? And
yes,
so where was that in the transition to running Elk Media? Were you married at the time? Were you divorced? Like, where did that factor in?
Yeah, it was a huge factor. I was married at the time I started it. And so there was that fear of, we had just built our, I say, dream house, had a new company at the time. My kids were so small. And I think that if there was ever a time of fear that really had a grip on me, I think it was that time. So that was about 1.5 years ago now that I did go through a divorce, and which was terrible. I don't wish it upon anybody, but it's definitely something that I just didn't see coming, but it happened. So I would say if I was being tested at any point in my life, that was definitely a huge trial for me. And I want to stress the importance of having people who support you around you, because I think really they're the heroes when anybody's going through a hard time, difficult time like that.
When did we meet? Sure. Was it 1.5 years ago? I mean, it was pretty close after. Like I remember you were fairly broken.
Yeah, I was. It was shortly after that. I think going through anything like that really gives you a very real look at what you want out of life, because you're essentially completely broken down, and you also have the opportunity to create a life that maybe like you were supposed to have, or other things prevented you from having that life, and to really take a deep look at what are those things that you want moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting for me to hear you. I want Brian to talk into this too, but it's interesting for me to hear your side of things, being that you encourage other people. Because when I talked to you, it was like, whoa, this woman needs encouraging.
Yes, I
You can
appreciate
do
that.
this, and so it's fun for me to hear that that's kind of normally what you do. And Brian's been also through a divorce, and I mean, I would love for you, Brian, just to share your thoughts on that after hearing what Bree said.
Well, I echo the hero comment about having people around you to love and support you, because it is, an incredibly painful experience on so many different levels. And yeah, I mean, I definitely think, I don't know where I would be had I not had, Philip and this business and all of our clients, surrounding me. So that part echoed a lot. And I think too, whether it's divorce or a health scare or, I think people go through different things where you kind of get torn down, and it's incredibly painful. Wouldn't wish it on anybody. But in that other sense that there is a revealing part of like, man, everything I thought was true isn't as true as I thought. What do I want the rest of my life to be like? And when you kind of get laid bare like that, it is a place to rebuild and have a fresh look at things. So in that sense, I agree with you in there. But yeah, going through that process is incredibly difficult. So
Normally I don't do this, but I'm just going to do this. Like, it's one thing that we talk about with this whole uncommon wealth. I love that wealth is part of our name, because it's not financial wealth. And that's, I think, what a lot of people will think of when you think of wealth. They think of finances. But Brian and I really feel like your core values, and honestly, like your good and bad experiences, have almost even more of a wealth component to your finances than anything else. Like going through things like you guys have gone and everybody has gone, produces endurance and character, which is a biblical term, right? Like, James chapter 1 verse 2 is my favorite thing, and it says, just, consider it great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that testing of your faith produces endurance. And like, that's exactly what you're talking about. And so fun to be able to hear where you're at now. So let's go a little further. So
All right.
the next time we talk, I mean, I'm thinking Brie King is on Yurtville Town, which I was super excited about. So the next time I get a call from Brie, she's like, okay, some things have changed, which is kind of like a running history between Brie and I. She always will call me like, hey, things are changing. Great. So what changed our second conversation after we talked about the yurts?
Yeah, so I do live in rural Tennessee, but it is about 30 miles north of Huntsville, Alabama, which is one of the fastest growing areas in the country right now. Pretty huge military base, and a lot of industries coming in. Facebook, I believe it's the FBI is coming in. They're putting it's just a huge tech town, engineers everywhere. And I have a mutual friend, or a good friend, that is a broker. And we had built this house, went through the divorce. I stayed in the house because it was my kid's home, so that was important, and had 30 acres and this house. And she said, hey, I know that you just built your house, but would you consider selling it? And I just had this feeling, because I knew she wouldn't come to me unless it was something. And so
Right.
we went through the details and the numbers, and I mean, I just started crying. I think I cried for about, I don't know, 2 days, because I knew that the opportunity I had was a rare one, because so many people were coming in and coming from the West, because the West cost of living is so much higher. They can buy property or homes in this area for much cheaper than they could out there, and just essentially pay cash. And so that's what was happening. Was somebody was coming in to work in Huntsville, had offered me a once in a lifetime opportunity to sell. And so I thought about it for about a day. I actually woke up that next morning and I remembered this house that I had driven by. I'm always looking at real estate. I just like it. I just always am kind of looking around. And I thought, I wonder if that one house is for sale on the river. And so I pulled up on the internet and it had been for sale for almost a year and they kept dropping the price. And I thought, okay, I've never stepped foot on this property, but let me go take a look. And so I think it was almost that day, we went and looked at the house and property that I'm at today.
So she calls me and she's like, okay, things have changed. And I want to clarify, quick clarifying question. When you were crying, those were like tears of joy, right? Not like I've lost it all, I'm moving. That like what was your thoughts when you were crying? Like good or bad?
Yeah, I think it was almost like a exorcism of all the emotion. I'd been trying to hold myself together for about 10 months and we built the house and it was our second home we had ever built and I really picked out everything. It was like my perfect, I would say, summation of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Of what I would say if I were to build another dream house, that would have been it. And I'd probably just build it again. But also everything I'd went through, the fear, I think coming out, the opportunity, I think I was super humbled. I felt like this was definitely some divine intervention happening, just as far as, you've been flirting with this idea. I'm going to give you the opportunity. So let's do it. Are you going to do it? Or are you just all talk type of thing?
Right.
So I think it was just all of that, everything just coming out.
So she calls me and she's like, I got an amazing offer and I've got this other property that I'm kind of looking at. And so I looked it up on the internet too. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is better than Yurtville.
It's way better.
And so describe the property, because that's what I think sold me of like, ooh, this is a great opportunity. And you seem like you have the drive and tenacity to do it. So describe the property to our listeners.
Okay. So there's a pretty large river that goes through our town that connects into the Tennessee River, which is a major waterway downstream. And there are not that many properties on the Elk River that are primary residences. So this property is about 2 miles from the main town center, but it also feels super remote. So I pull up, it's a log cabin is the primary house. It's not huge. It's about 1,500 square feet, 2-story. I could tell it was grown up everywhere. Nobody had been living there. There's a detached garage. And then I walk onto the property further. It's about 2.6 acres. And down at the river, there are 3 cabins that have not been finished. Little, almost like tiny houses. They look like about 200, 300 square foot tiny houses. And I remember walking, and Melissa, of course, my broker, she's getting eaten up by mosquitoes. She's just getting eaten alive. And she said, I looked at her, I said, this is the motherland. This is it. And so, I ended up putting an offer. I got it for a steal and did have to get flood insurance just because in the winters it can be pretty unpredictable, and ended up my house appraised for what they wanted to give me, and we did the closing all in one day.
Unbelievable.
It was crazy because he was a VA guy, and so he had a lot of paperwork, which typically takes a lot longer. And Melissa said, if this all goes through, this is divine intervention.
Right.
Yeah, and it did. It went seamlessly.
So you got the property. You got Elk Media at this point, right? What's the first thing that you did? Like, what was the first thing? Did you do the primary residence, or did you start renovating these cabins?
Yeah, I did the primary residence. It needed just a little bit of renovation to make my kids comfortable. I mean, they had been, I don't know, a year and a half since they've been living in that new house and made it their own. I wanted to make it super comfortable for them, and wasn't necessarily an upgrade, but also just as far as a lifestyle upgrade, it needed to be something better than what I didn't want to make it feel like it was a downgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a little bit of renovations inside the main house. And then we started one cabin at a time.
Okay. So your vision right away was to turn those cabins into like a little resort type feel,
Yes.
right?
I wanted to Airbnb them.
Right. And I remember talking through that and like, the more unique, this is what Brian and I would say about Airbnbs, the more unique of a property you have, the better chances of people are going to come in.
Yes.
And it did seem like things were falling into place fairly quickly for your favor. For example, like your friend that was a banker that called you about the canoes. I want you to talk through that because like you are like right on the river.
Yes.
So tell us
right on the river. I always had the idea. I mean, if people are going to come stay, I for sure want to highlight the experience. I knew I would have to have some kind of boats, canoes, kayaks, something. And so I had a friend, they had just repoed a bunch of canoes at another business down the road. And he's like, I got these canoes. Like, do you want them? Because I don't want them. Like, the bank doesn't want these canoes. And so I did. I ended up buying them with a canoe rack trailer. And then, I had to buy 10. I only needed like 3 or 4 of them. I ended up selling, I think, 6 of them. So I was like, well, here we are living the uncommon life.
Yes.
Yeah, I sold 6 of them. So it ended up paying for itself. But
Yeah, that's amazing.
my son had swim lessons the other day, and the teacher said, don't worry, or Kaden said, the teacher, don't worry. She doesn't have any money. She just sells canoes. I'm like, don't. I was like, don't worry. You're going to get paid. Don't worry.
That's funny.
Yes. So good. Okay,
Kids are the
Brian,
darndest
I've
things.
been like running this thing, so you got to go. Sorry, buddy.
Oh, no, I think just such a testament to kind of like you said, though, are you going to walk the walk? And we run into a lot of people that are constant. The comment I kind of keyed in on from you is like, I was always kind of constantly looking at real estate. And I think, when we talk about the 7 sources of residual income, real estate is a very powerful one. And so it's like doing something that you're naturally doing on your own and that you have an interest in, you have an understanding of. And I know a lot has been said about Airbnb. Everything was working in your favor. And we just we're shooting this kind of I don't know if it's the tail end of COVID-19 or not. But how has that kind of impacted things in your world?
Yeah, I think in two ways. One, I noticed that because of the way my property is set up, it is isolated from having like going to a hotel or condo type of scenario. We have people all around. It is somewhat isolated and out in nature. And so I do think, especially with a couple comments that have come in where people have canceled their big plans but still want to get away, but just need to do so in a local manner, I think I have for sure gotten some bookings because of that. I would say the other positive thing is that it's given me another lever to kind of pull and push when I want. So if something like that happens again or something in the future and say it disrupts my marketing company, I feel better knowing I have something that could help me with making up the difference. So I really like that opportunity.
Right.
For sure.
So how many cabins do you have renovated currently?
I have one completely that has been rented for a couple of months now. Just yesterday, I finished the second one, which I'll have that listing up probably early next week. And then the large one that sleeps 6, it will be done by the 1st of July because I already have it rented. So I hope it's done by then.
If you build it, they will come.
Yes.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is another wrinkle to the story, always is, because Brie will call me and, hey, there's something changed. So tell us about the headstone on your property, because that's a big deal. And I got super excited about that, which ended up being awesome, but not as awesome as, anyway. So tell us about the headstone.
Yeah, there's a headstone there, which that was the only thing that kind of, I would say, freaked me out when I first visited the property. I've never been really big into scary movies or anything because I'm a
Right.
big chicken.
That's why
So
we're
I
friends.
saw it. It's a pretty elaborate headstone, and it has a iron fence around it. I could tell somebody really took care of it before I bought the property, and did a little research. Had some people that used to, I think it just kind of hang around this property, and it was almost like word of mouth that there is a couple that is buried there. You can see the names. We call them the Greens. It's James Green and Hetty Green. And when I heard these tales of them, I ended up going and researching through Ancestry.com. And it turns out that James Green was one of the first paid slaves to fight in the Confederacy during the Civil War.
Wow.
Isn't that?
And yeah, it was really cool because his wife is also buried with him. I can't remember which is which, but they died around like 1915 and I think 1917. So the gravestone's fairly old, but I always thought it was interesting how elaborate it was.
Right.
So for the time, especially,
Mm-hmm.
come to find out that his owner deeded him the land when his owner passed away. So he deeded James and his family the land, and they ended up raising. Have found 5 kids so far on the land, and they were married for over 50 years before they passed away. So it seems
Wow.
like a super happy story that like turned into something decent from what it was at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was like a time when you were like, this could be worth something, this property, because of that specific thing. Tell us about how you figured out that and kind of went down the rabbit hole there.
Yeah, there is a Uncle Nearest who is not related. It's in relation to Jack Daniel's Distillery, which is about 15 minutes away from here. It's a super huge tourist destination internationally. People from all over the world come and visit. They let's see, Fawn Weaver has started a company called Uncle Nearest Whiskey, and what she has brought to light about a situation is that Uncle Nearest was actually, or Nearest Green as his name, was actually the person that taught Jack Daniels the recipe for the old number 7. And so I thought, wow, what an opportunity if this is related to have just more connectivity
Yeah.
to what Fawn has been working on as far as bringing light to a story that had been in the past kind of brushed under the table. And so I ended up contacting her, and she said that it was different lineage. The Greens in my backyard are from Kentucky, and Uncle Nearest was from Moore County. So just a cool opportunity there. But she loved the story, and hopefully we'll continue to be in communications with her on that.
Yeah, I love how you took something that could be so negative and now you've kind of wrapped up the whole Greens, the James and Hetty Green story in your Airbnb as kind of like a reverent kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a responsibility to take care of it, and just out of respect. I'm still not like super okay with having people buried in my backyard, but I think it's probably a lesson I needed to learn. So yeah, it's really neat to be able to tell that story to people before they come, so that they know the history and where they're going to be spending their time over the weekend or whenever they visit with us.
Totally.
Super neat story. I mean, it's just, I think the other thing that I'm drawn to with your story, Brie, is I call it the layers of the entrepreneurial onion. I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we start having a little bit of a success and we want to get out like an apple or something, instead of just peeling out the layers of our own onion. And it took me a long time to learn that. And I just think that with this opportunity that you've created and God's blessed you with, it's just like layer after layer of just blessing over what you're doing. Instead of trying to start something new, you're just peeling back the layers of the onion. And it's just like, maybe not, onion's not the best analogy, but you get my point. It just, the deeper and deeper you go, it's like the more value you can extract. And not even to make it about money, but just like the romance of the whole story. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much depth to the property and to the what you're doing for it, and what it was and what it will be. And it's just neat to uncover all that.
Thank you.
When you like forecast this thing, let's say 3 cabins and all complete, or you can talk specifically now and you only have 1, 2 now since of yesterday. How does this cash flow for your personal, like business, and how does that work?
Yeah, I have, since I do it through Airbnb, the cool thing, and I think I've heard you guys talk about, I mean, before they get there, Airbnb is sending you a draft to your account. And so you're not the one exchanging money. They're taking care of a little bit of insurance for you, as far as like people are freaked out to have them come onto one of your properties. They kind of cover you in that. Minimal cost, because I have already a mortgage on this property, so it's not like I have another mortgage I need to cover. And yeah, the 1 cabin right now, of course, we're in high season and I'm still playing with the price, but the 1 cabin's bringing in about extra $1,500 a month right now.
Wow.
So I'm hoping that I'd like to get an extra 3,000 when I get all of them going.
Sure.
And Philip and I talk about this a lot, of kind of what's next, because I have to make sure I don't get ahead of myself. But I think what I've learned is I really enjoy the process.
Mm-hmm.
And next, I once I get the 3rd one done and everything's rolling and I don't have to be in it, as far as scalability, hiring the housekeeper, getting the dry cleaners now, doing the linens, have the keyless lock entry, so I don't have to be tied. Like, what's next? Is it another rental property? Is it more traveling for my family? So that's really fun to think about, the possibilities.
And like this happens so quickly. Like I just want to just really.
This is all within like what, the last
a year and a half, like
6 to 9 months, basically, though.
Yes.
Like from really maximizing it.
I mean, I just am so encouraged about that, and to try to figure out how to systematize this whole thing in a way. Here's my question: when do you want to stop doing what you're doing today?
Never.
Right.
I never do. I love it.
This is like, if I can tell anybody, and I hope there's many millions of people listening, like when you get into your sweet spot, when you start like really going after your unique giftings, and Brie, you're doing that. So kudos. Like you don't want to stop doing it. And then retirement's like, wait, what? Like I'd never want to retire from this. Like I want to keep striving for the next layer. And it's been fun to be able to like be alongside of you, be your co-pilot in this uncommon journey you're on, because that's like my job of like, okay, hey, let's get this one streamlined and then let's move to the next thing. But knowing that the timeline, like you said, Brian, is 6 to 9 months, like this is not like years and years, 30 years I've been investing in this thing. Like it doesn't have to be. And to see your encouragement and your enthusiasm working towards this thing is like, let's go. And you can get paid for this? Like it's ridiculous.
I got 3 quick points if we have time.
Oh, we have time. It's Brie King.
I think too, like I'll go back to the onion analogy, but as you continue to develop different, value within this property, and you're researching history and all these different things, the less likely someone is to come in and trash your place. Like when you're showing them so much extreme value, it's like no one's going to want to come there and throw a party and wreck the place, And so I think that diminishes kind of that, which is, we talk about Airbnb quite a bit, or short-term rentals, all of that. And that's typically like the biggest objection right away is like, well, they're going to trash my place and all this stuff. And it's just like, well, it doesn't seem to be our experience with, dozens of people doing this. But so I think that's point number 1. Point number 2 is like you mentioned, traveling with your family. When you own an Airbnb, travel then, to me, in large part, becomes research and development of, if you stay at an Airbnb, like, oh, we should do this at our Airbnb, or, we think, like all that stuff becomes a potential, business deduction, consult your accountant. I'm not a tax advisor, disclaimer, but a lot of that stuff does become, in my opinion, tax deductible to your business because you're getting value and looking for different ways to improve your own listing. So that was point number 2. And then point number 3 is just like, could you speak to, do you have like a vision yet of, maybe your kids already are helping on the property and kind of a role they could play in, facilitating this environment that you're creating there?
Good question.
Yeah, really good question. I do notice probably half of the people that come have children and half don't. It's more like couples that want to get away. And I think 2 things. Yes, my kids, I think about it a lot because where a lot of people may have 401ks and aren't comfortable with this kind of more, I guess you could say, risk taking or however you want to categorize it as far as creating this kind of life. The cool thing about this kind of life is you are leaving a legacy. And so I think about, as far as my kids in relation to what I'm doing, not so much that right now they're playing a huge role, but I think later on it will be crucial in at least giving them a different perspective of what, if they want to have this kind of life, they can. If not, that's okay too. We'll support them. And then the other thing is the opportunities with the kids that come to see my son, who's a little bit introverted, just kind of start blossoming. We had a deaf couple that the parents could not hear, but their kids could. And so they're signing all the time. Well, they've been with us now 3 times, come back because they love it so much. And my kids have become friends with them and they're learning some sign and seeing a different way of life. Not all of us are exactly the same. And I've just gives me goosebumps to think about just the perspectives that they're getting, meeting other people. And it's not all the time. It's not like we go entertain them, but just, we let them run around the yard and my kids are out there running. So they make friends. Super cool.
Right. I think it's just instrumental that they see their mother taking these choices and doing these things, and they get to be a part of this. Like right now, they're kind of in a little incubator of uncommon, and their mother is the spearhead, truly. And then when they get older, like, well, what do I like to do? And I love that the level of engagement, this is what I've kind of been trying to like we've been talking about when we talk, is the level of engagement from you. I want to be as low as you want it to be or as high as you want it to be. And so to put processes in place, or people like you talked about, like the electronic locks, so you can be as hands-on if you want, hands-off if you want to be, or you can be engaged with them of like doing a campfire and s'mores, or however level of like engagement you want to do with your customers, your guests, you can do that. And so it feels way more, I would say, approachable than I'm locked in this. I have to do this. Like that doesn't feel good to anybody. And so you've done a great job of thinking and forecasting, and your kids are watching that. And so for them to be able to, like you said, make friends and then like keep having these relationships, like is a powerful testimony just to this uncommon life that if you do what you love to do, like it's exciting, and it doesn't have to be a drag, and you get to do this every day, and you get to tweak things, and you get to figure out, can I charge more? Can I charge less? Like what's next? So man, I just love it. So you kind of touched on this before. You wanted to make sure it was an upgrade for your kids. Do you feel like you've achieved that?
I do. I will say living on the river for 10 months out of the year is absolutely amazing. And then in the winter in this area, there are threats of floods. And so just to be cognizant of that, I think would be the only thing as far as my point of view that I have to remember. The spring and summer is just amazing. And so that gets us through the fear of, if the river floods, etc. I feel like they now see that when people come over and there's so many people that want to stay where we are, I think that gives them a little bit of pride, and they're proud of where they're living in this little log cabin that we have. And so that makes me pretty happy.
Should. So what's next for you, Brie? What do you think?
Oh man. Well, we did go ahead and we're kind of testing out a beta for, we have an apparel company called Elk River Outfitters, to kind of still go along with the whole branding of the overall brand. We did that. We're testing that right now. And I believe what I want to do is, once I get all three going, pay the house off and then start looking for the next rental property to add to the portfolio. I just feel like the scalability, I know we talk about this a lot, is just unlimited, as far as how much you want to do and if you want to do it or not.
Right. Man, isn't this a great story, Brian? Let's be honest. She's pretty uncommon and she fits really well to this podcast.
Well, I'm glad I found you guys are uncommon too, so there you go.
Sorry, I was muted but I love this story. And as you're saying, like, what's next? I've literally had, Philip knows me, I've had 32 ideas, but the one that came to mind the most, and maybe I'm just a nerd, I think you should get metal detectors. I just think there's gold in them there hills and the history of the property. Metal detectors would be so much fun, low cost. Everybody could use them. And it'd be cool to see, if people found stuff on the property and all of that. So anyways, take it or leave it. No pressure, but that was what came to me.
So Brie, how do our listeners hear more about you, find out about you, like reach out to you? Give us the details, because I have a feeling a lot of people will.
Yeah, for sure. Email is just brie@elkmediaco.com, or just hit me up on Facebook.
That's awesome. Man, I love your Uncommon. I love your journey that you're on. Thank you for reaching out to us and just taking that plunge. If you are on the other side of this podcast and you want to do that 15-minute call, we would love to engage, try to figure out what's in common in your life and get you down this uncommon path, because it is not only enjoyable, but it's kind of scary too, but it's also like totally worth it. And so once you start going down there, it's a slippery slope, but like Brie, you can dominate it. So thank you for listening. You've been listening to the Uncommon Life Project. I've been your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I am Brian Dewhurst.
Thanks for listening. Again, go to www.uncommonwealth.com. Thanks.
Go be uncommon. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of the Uncommon Life Project, brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.